WADR, promoting dialogue. It's May Day in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. ECOWAS sets a 6-month transitional period as it acknowledges the withdrawal of the 3 AES countries from the bloc by January 2025.
To consider and adopt both separation modalities and the contingency plan covering political and economic relations between ECOWAS, the Republic of Niger, the Republic of Mali, and Burkina Faso.
Ghana's parliament resumes sitting after the December 7 presidential and parliamentary elections. The dismissed mayor of Dakar, Barthelemy Jats, will today initiate a long legal battle to reclaim its position and mark a declaration to protect marine resources within the West Central Gulf of Guinea.
My greatest vision for this sub-regional body is to foster and facilitate inter-regional trade among ourselves.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and welcome to our listeners across the sub-region and beyond. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has finally acknowledged the withdrawal of AES member countries from the bloc and initiated a 6-month transitional period. This was part of the resolution read out by the President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Aliyu Touré, at the end of the 66th Ordinary Summit of Heads of State and Government. The decision, according to Touré, aligns with Article 91 of the ECOWAS treaties, which recognizes the sovereignty of member states. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger had, a day before the ECOWAS summit on Sunday, insisted on leaving the sub-regional body by January 29, 2025. WADR's Usma Umar in Abuja reports.
The president of the ECOWAS Commission told the gathering that the January 29 to July 29 window will enable the 3 countries to rejoin the bloc under current negotiations led by Presidents Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal and Faure Gnassingbé of Togo. Dr. Omar Aliyu Touré says Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger will be readmitted when they withdraw their applications during the 6 months.
In this regard, the authority extends the mandate of President Faure Gnassingbé of Togo and President Diomaye Diakhar Faye of Senegal to continue their mediation role up to the end of the transition period to bring the 3 member countries back to ECOWAS.
While the ECOWAS Commission will immediately launch withdrawal formalities after the January deadline, the Council of Ministers had been directed to hold a special session during the second quarter of 2025.
To consider and adopt both separation modalities and the contingency plan covering political and economic relations between ECOWAS and the Republic of Niger, the Republic of Mali, and Burkina Faso.
As a reminder, the leaders of the AES at a summit on Saturday announced their resolve to exit the bloc but declared to maintain a visa-free policy for ECOWAS citizens. The summit, however, hails the successful conduct of elections in Senegal and Ghana. Here is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
All of us in the region to learn from this good democratic practice and prioritize our country's national unity to ensure political stability of the region. That this manner of peaceful transition recalls the culture of democracy is not only in West Africa, but also in the entire African continent.
The sub-regional body had in the last 3 years dealt with a myriad of issues from political to security, economic and social challenges in member countries. Thus, the ECOWAS Jubilee celebration themed The Future Summit will address these concerns. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Still on the 66th ECOWAS Heads of State and Government Summit in Abuja, Nigeria, the Special Envoy of the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel is urging continuous dialogue between the bloc and the three Sahelan countries over the impending consequences. Speaking as a member of the High Table, Leonardo Santos Simao warns that the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger could potentially worsen the socio-economic and political crisis the region already faces. He remains optimistic and assures that he will present the matter before the UN Security Council on December 20, 2024. The UN envoy also praised Senegal and Ghana for consolidating peace and stability by successfully conducting crucial elections.
I would like to congratulate President Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal and the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and the people of Ghana for the smooth conduct of these elections, which contributed to the consolidation of democracy in the sub-region. We encourage member states to share the valuable experiences these successful elections bring, to inspire other countries to overcome obstacles in constructing sound democratic practices, including successful elections. The threat to the unity and cohesion of ECOWAS, following the announcement of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger to withdraw, remains a major concern for regional integration. In this regard, the United Nations commended the efforts exerted by ECOWAS and its member states to seek creative solutions and avoid socioeconomic, political and security consequences of a disintegrated community that has previously been an example of unity and integration in Africa. In my upcoming presentation to the United Nations Security Council on 20th December, I will reinforce this message with particular focus on the implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 2719 in West Africa and the Sahel region.
Leonardo Santos Simao is the Special Envoy of the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel. Meanwhile, the West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS has approved setting up a special court to try crimes committed in the Gambia during its military dictatorship. The landmark decision was announced at the summit of regional heads of state in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. The court will cover alleged crimes committed during former President Yahya Jammeh, whose rule from 1996 to 2017 was marked by arbitrary detention, torture, rights abuses, and extrajudicial killings. Jammeh lost the presidential election in 2016 and went into exile in Equatorial Guinea a year later after initially refusing to step down. Calls for justice for the victims of the former Gambian leader had been growing for years. In 2021, a true commission in the country wrapped up its hearings with strong recommendations urging the government to try perpetrators.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's now take a flight to Ghana, where the National Assembly resumes a sitting today, Monday, marking its first session since the December 7 presidential and parliamentary elections. The elections have granted the opposition National Democratic Congress (NDC) an overwhelming majority in the next parliament, set to be sworn in on January 6, 2025. From Accra, WAD Arats Nadedetete reports.
Monday's recall follows the House's indefinite adjournment on November 7, 2024 due to the absence of an agenda from the Business Committee. Earlier, Speaker of Parliament Alban Kinsford Summan Nabagbin had declined a request by the Majority Leader Alexander Apenyo-Markin to recall Parliament on November 28th and 29th to address 22 pressing matters. The Speaker questioned the feasibility of resolving such a large number of items within 2 days and urged the government to prioritize key issues for discussion after the elections. Speaker Bagbin emphasized that parliamentary activities will remain suspended until after the December 7 general elections. In a statement issued on December 2, the Speaker indicated that the resumption will focus on completing essential tasks before transitioning to the 9th Parliament. One critical item on Parliament's agenda is the presentation of the expenditure in advance of appropriation for the first quarter of 2025. This budget statement, a constitutional requirement and standard practice in election years, details projected revenue and expenditure for the period between January and March. It ensures the smooth running of government operations by authorizing the withdrawal of funds from the Consolidated Fund ahead of the passage of the Appropriation Act. For WADR, Nadedi Teti, Accra.
In more political matters, a Togolese opposition party in a statement over the weekend denounced the nation's legislative election scheduled for February next year, stating its readiness to boycott the polls. The National Alliance for Change, ANC, expressed its firm and deliberate rejection of the senatorial elections announced by the government. ANC defines its action as a step further in rejecting the recently adopted constitution that moves the country to a somewhat parliamentary system of government. Oge Obiorika reports.
Many felt that financial expert Tijan Chiam did not want to hold an internal election to designate the party's candidate for fear of not emerging victorious, while former PDCI minister and executive Jean-Louis Billon has announced his candidacy for the presidency. Tijan Chiam reassures that an election will soon be organized to choose the party's candidate for the 2025 presidential election. Tijan Thiam was quick to respond to Jean-Louis Billon, a party executive who has announced his candidacy and believes that the PDCI president is afraid of competition. As a reminder, Jean-Louis Billon is accused of undermining the unity of the PDCI, the main opposition party. He has been summoned by the party's disciplinary board.
That was rather Atisu voice in a report filed by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Albin Ade regarding the presidential election in Cote d'Ivoire scheduled for next year, 2025. Let's bring you this development. Here in Senegal, the mayor of Dakar has announced a long legal battle to regain his mayoral seat after his removal from the National Assembly, which resulted in the loss of his mandate as an MP. Barthélémy Diaz was stripped of his post as a mayor following a decision by the department's prefect. The reason given in both cases was Diaz's final conviction in a case of assault and battery resulting in the death of a young man in 2011. Christopher Atijo tells us more.
Following his removal from the mayoral position of the capital Dakar by decisions of the departmental prefect, Barthélémy Diaz denounced, and I quote, forfeiture, end of quote. He and those close to him are announcing a long legal battle to regain his seat as mayor of the capital. Starting this Monday, December 16, municipal councillors contesting the decision of the prefect of Dakar intend to vote on a motion in support of Barthélémy Diaz. The head of communications of the deposed mayor of Dakar has announced that several jurisdictions will be seized. First, the administrative chamber of the Court of Cassation to overturn the prefect's decision to remove Barthélémy Diaz from the list of municipal councillors following his conviction in a homicide case in 2011. Supporters of Barthélémy Diaz denounced an attempt to muzzle an opponent. The deposed mayor of Dakar is backed by Amadou Ba, former prime minister and unsuccessful candidate in the last presidential election. In a press release, he denounced an attack on the popular will and the foundation of local democracy. The Sam Sakadu opposition coalition, led by Barthélémy Diaz in the early legislative elections of November 17, denounced, and I quote, the liquidation of a troublesome political adversary and the attack on democracy. End of quote. It called on the population to mobilize against what it described as an abuse of power by the new authorities.
Christopher Atijo with that report. Meanwhile, a renowned media institute, IJECOM, held the 7th edition of its Journalism Award ceremony in Dakar, Senegal, for several journalists for their investigative reports on various subjects. The event was preceded by a panel discussion on climate governance and ecological transition, role and responsibility of the media. The environmental experts on the panel deployed the very low level of media content on topics related to the effects of climate change in the country. Imo Edit reports.
According to Biram Fai, head of media at the Panos Institute and a specialist in environmental issues, environmental topics receive little coverage in the media.
There were 142 Senegalese articles covering environmental issues recently. 100 of these were produced by the Daily Le Soleil and the Senegalese press agency APS. In the private press, these issues are less covered, as economic, societal and sometimes cultural topics dominate. So, there is no specialized environmental desk. That's the problem.
According to Wadr, this is due to the very low number of journalists specializing in the environment sector, but also and above all, a lack of training. Traore, an international climate consultant, underlines the keys for better coverage of environmental issues.
When they receive information, they can also take the time to think about it. Scientifically, talk to experts, ask for interviews, or to maintain a certain objective neutrality about the type of information they receive. And that is extremely important.
Chaji Ajumasek, program manager at Natural Justice, put forward some issues that could be of interest to journalists to increase media content on the climate crisis.
The most significant impact that we have all seen is the rise in sea levels and consequently coastal erosion. Beyond the problem of coastal erosion in Senegal in particular, there is the salinization of sand, etc. And this has a fundamental impact on agricultural productivity. Many communities are facing this problem, and it has an impact on the productivity of the schools.
The panel discussion held as part of the 7th Educom Journalism Awards ended with more than a dozen journalists honored for their work on a variety of subjects, including environment, corruption, good governance, and human rights.
Imo Edit fight that report. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of the top stories. ECOWAS sets a 6-month transitional period as it acknowledges the withdrawal of the 3 AES countries from the bloc by January 2025. Ghana's parliament resumes sitting after the December 7 presidential and parliamentary elections. The dismissed mayor of Dakar, Barthélémy Dias, today initiates a long legal battle to reclaim its position. Still ahead, regional stakeholders adopt a landmark declaration to protect marine resources within the West Central Gulf of Guinea. We also have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Thanks for staying with us. Elsewhere, a landmark declaration was adopted at the just ended 15th Ministerial Conference of the Fisheries Committee for the West Central Gulf of Guinea held in Monrovia. WADR's Grace Joshua has the details.
Speaking at the program, Director General of the Liberia National Fisheries and Aquaculture, Emma Glasgow, pledged the country's commitment to regional cooperation and sustainable management of maritime resources. Glasgow emphasized the need for a comprehensive national fishery policy, enactment of law to combat illegal fisheries activities, and the ratification and demonstration of key international agreements such as the United Nations Port-State Measure Agreement.
So my fellow member states of the FCWC, today, as Liberia assumes the chairmanship, I can assure you that we will double up our efforts and improve on existing gains of the FCWC. My greatest vision for this sub-regional body is to foster and facilitate inter-regional trade among ourselves, particularly Liberia.
Serving as keynote speaker, President Joseph Boakai cited that the health of the maritime ecosystem directly impacted the prosperity and sustainability of every nation. President Bouakai, during his presentation, outlined recent achievements in Liberian maritime sectors, including the establishment of a state-of-the-art fisheries monitoring center to guard against illegal activities. The conference concluded with the adaptation of the Monrovia Declaration. The document set as a landmark commitment for the Fisheries Committee of the West Africa Central Gulf of Guinea to boost regional cooperation and promote sustainable practices. For West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Grace Joshua in Monrovia.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, let's travel back to Abuja, Nigeria, and rejoin Usman Umar for a review of the local dailies.
We begin with the Vanguard newspaper. Federal government overshoots 2024 borrowing target by 4 trillion naira. There are a couple of riders to the story, starting with borrowing 49% above target on 11th month, may hit 67% at year end, and then domestic borrowing hits 8.9 trillion naira. More borrowing crowds out private sector. Experts are commenting on this development. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger have till July 2025 to return to ECOWAS. This was part of the resolutions of the heads of government of ECOWAS member countries. And of course, President Tinubu to ECOWAS leaders. Let's learn from Ghana's democratic example. Nigeria Guild of Editors expresses concern over anti-media and free speech laws. Terrorism, federal government secure conviction of over 200 suspects. This is according to the Office of the National Security Advisor. And finally, from the front page of the Vanguard, we have exported petrol to Cameroon, Ghana, Angola, and South Africa. This is according to Dangote Refinery. We move quickly to the Daily Sun newspaper. Tears, sorrow in Benue with rider. Scores dead as boat capsizes. 3 die, 5 trapped in Lagos road crash. We move quickly to the Daily Trust newspaper. High expectations as 32 states budget 22 trillion naira for 2025. With the rider, appropriations upped by 31% from 2024. Governors should prioritize capital expenditure. This is from Expert. Over 200 terror suspects bag death sentence, life imprisonment. This is according to a report. And this is the much we have for you on this segment as I hand you back to the studio.
Thank you, Usman Umar, for the press review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
This segment of Newslink focuses on the ECOWAS Commission's acknowledgement of the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from the regional organization. And this was part of the resolution read out by the president of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Aliyu Touré, at the end of the 66th Ordinary Summit of Heads of State and Government. Our guest is Ibrahima Khan, an AU governance expert who speaks about this latest decision by ECOWAS.
This military regime want to remain in power, and we all know what ECOWAS norms and principles are regarding military regime, and also the fact that a lot of action have been undertaken in the past to reduce the time of the transition, but none of them respected those time of transition. So I think it was clear that the separation needed to be acted. Now, it was not acted, in my view, in the form that is required because none of the 3 members attended the ECOWAS meeting to really, formally act the separation. They just decided not to attend the meeting. And that's why I think the 6-month period was acted, and the 6-month period maybe will help to finalize the modalities of the separation.
What do you think could be some of the separation modalities and the contingency plan covering the political and economic relations between ECOWAS and the AES member countries during the meeting within the 6 months period?
Well, when you look at the geography of the three countries and you look at the type of infrastructure that exists for the mobility of person and goods in the region, then you realize that the three countries have different type of relationship. Take, for instance, Niger, who is a landlocked country, well connected with Nigeria, but less connected with the rest of the region. You know, the type of agreement that ECOWAS will have in relation with the borders of Nigeria will be completely different with the type of arrangement that Mali and Senegal or Mali and Cote d'Ivoire will have. Burkina Faso also will be in some complicated relationship because it has borders with Ghana, but it also has borders, even a train between Abidjan and Ouagadougou. This relationship needs to be clarified, and the regime of mobility will need to be clarified in a document. That needs to be done.
What impact would the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger have on the ECOWAS region?
Well, there are multiple dimensions. But the first one, which is just geographical, ECOWAS will no longer have borders with North Africa. That's the first impact. Mali had a border with Algeria. Niger had a border with Algeria and Libya. There will no longer physical border between ECOWAS and North Africa, which is a shame because the AU system is also trying to connect all the different regions of Africa. And now the connection between West Africa and North Africa will be totally complicated. The second one, ECOWAS will have to reorganize the trade system, reorganize many of its programs, because all those programs included, and some of them are very, very important programs, take the issue of the security of the region. The three countries have been in a very difficult security situation. And those security situations will, we like it or not, will have an impact on ECOWAS countries. So ECOWAS will have no choice but to continue to find a way of collaborating with the three countries. Because if the three countries collapse, I don't want to see that one. It will have an impact on ECOWAS countries.
Ibrahim Akan is an AU governance expert. Now, in the world of sports, the Nigeria Football Federation has backed Super Eagles forward Ademola Lookman and Super Falcons goalkeeper Chiamaka Nnadozie, who are in contention for the top men's and women's categories at today's Confederation of African Football Awards in Marrakech, Morocco. Lookman and Nnadozie spearhead Nigeria's charge for honors at this year's ceremony as the country contests for 7 awards. The 27-year-old vie for the Men's Player of the Year award against Ivory Coast's Simon Dingra and Morocco's Arch Hakimi, Guinea's Sekou Guirassy and South Africa's Rowan Williams. On Sunday, the Nigerian football governing body, in a statement titled 2024 CAF Awards, Lookman is the man. Whichever way you look at it, went all out the roof for the Atlanta Star and the Paris FC goalkeeper. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukidi and Mauro Ju for the technical support. Coming up shortly is WADR's flagship health program, Well Buddy, with Oge Obiorika. At 1 p.m., Esolu Jeju will bring you the news in French, which is Info chez vous. I am Augustine Cully. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New EMI